get in a lot of trouble.
So you, I can send you, by the way, a little copy of my PowerPoint Iceland presentation.
That would be fantastic.
It's got some good photos and some facts and figures.
Yeah.
Another place you have to go to is the Westman Islands, which is off the south coast. There's a John.
Is that the ones that are new? Volcanic?
Yeah. So I think his name is John McPhee. Yeah. He's an American journalist. He's written dozens of books. One of the chapters of the book, Control of Nature, is all about the Westman Islands. That's why I went there, because I read it, and it's about the volcano that occurred in the 70s, and suddenly out of nowhere there's a 600-foot volcano, which you can hike up now, and one of the events that the locals will never forget, like how in the 1600s they had a bunch of Algerians, I think it was, pirates who came to the island, killed a lot of people, took a lot of Icelanders as slaves, and drove a lot of them to the cliffs to hide until the pirates left. That's the reason that the Icelanders built a stronghold there and had the only standing army for many years afterwards, waiting for the pirates to return, which they never did. Weird shit, you know?
Right.
Iceland is
not...
not...
in the vein of the elves and everything else.
Yeah, it's not a normal country by any means, which is why you're going.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's so good to know all those things.
Yeah, so you gotta go to the Westman Islands. The ferry is kind of cool.
Do you take a ferry then?
Yeah, so it's totally different than the Seattle ferries. Instead of very compact and easy to drive in and off, their ferry is the nose of the ship opens up and you drive out, and then it closes again. And some of the designs have leaked in the past, so I think they've sunk. So it's kind of a weird design. I don't know if it's obsolete.
So does it like trap you in there then, basically?
Yeah, and then they play episodes of Friends, and then they have it in Iceland, and you can see the crowd watching stuff that we watched in the 90s and laughing, and at that point is when I went to the side of the ship to look out at night to see the lights of the island approaching, and I looked back and I saw people throwing boxes out the window, and I went down to the kitchen and I asked them why they were doing that, and the girl didn't really know, and apparently they just don't recycle much. They just throw stuff out into the ocean. And I told locals on the island, and they were pretty aghast, and they said they would talk to the employees. So if you're on that ferry and you see them still doing it, you'll know that I didn't stop them at all. But, so that's sort of part of that shit, is that they just, the environmental awareness is sometimes there, sometimes not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder if it's just because they're so secluded that, and there's not a lot of people that they don't really
who's going to be the whistleblower, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And who's going to really care if they have so much space.
Right.
Or water around them to dump boxes in.
Right.
That's interesting. To have so much space that is secluded.
Yeah.
And then just this tiny compact bunch of people. Just the differences. Because you think of like Australia or whatever, which is an island or continent as well. But there's a lot more large cities, even though there's such a vast amount of space on it that isn't used, but there are. I don't know, it's just interesting.
Well, I think what you're getting at is part of the fascination I have with Iceland, that you look at a travel book, one of those big books that boasts, you know, every country, and you look through the pages and it'll have info about every country. Well, you'll have a whole page about the island of St. Martin in the Caribbean, and you'll have a whole page about India. Well, the ratio of what you can know to what there is to know about a country is going to be a lot greater for a place like Iceland than India. You're never going to scratch the surface of that country. But Iceland, you can really get down to some stories. For example, the fishing industry. You can ask somebody about how, you know, the fishing quotas have been bought up and monopolized. And now there's a handful of people who own the fishing rights to the country, and they are rich as hell. And the government is trying to regulate that by, you know, yada yada. But you get the point. They're trying to reverse that because now it's a monopoly like the oil business. So that's a story to follow up on. There's a whole bunch of leads to follow up on.
Because Isn't marine products one of the highest exports?
That's the story. Is the fishing industry has been a huge sliver of their economy.
Yeah.
Tourism is growing, right? Fishing is, I think, shrinking in proportion, but they're both still huge.
Right.
Whaling is growing. How does that affect the whale watching?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
I wonder if anyone's ever been on a whale watching tour when someone was hunting whales and got to witness that.
Oh, I bet.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the story of how Greenpeace went into Iceland's harbor in Reykjavik. I don't know when this was, but I believe they sunk 2 whaling vessels.
Oh, wow.
That's actually part of the reason why the Icelanders support whaling, because from my understanding, they saw it as an affront to the Iceland people, right? Small countries are very nationalistic, so they took it more as an insult to the country rather than an activist message.
Yeah.
So that might have actually backfired on Greenpeace, because the Iceland people don't tend to care very much one way or the other about whaling unless they feel threatened, like we're impeding on their national choice. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I think that's all that I have to ask you at this point in time.
Well, let me ask you something.
Oh, go for it.
Maybe give me 1 or 2 or 3 reasons why you're going to Iceland.
One, I've always enjoyed Scandinavian culture, and just with the culture, the landscapes, everything like that. Vikings probably more superficially than anything. Also, I know a few people that have been there, so I have resources to learn about it. 2, just or 3. Just to do something on my own. I feel that it's a good place. Like, I've heard a lot of safe things, a lot of interesting things, a lot of beautiful nature there. So enough nature, enough artsy people, enough friendliness, and enough culture, and that little quaint, elves moving, or being the reason for moving roads and stuff as well. There's a family there that, the wife is pregnant and needs someone to help out on the farm. And, it's a good opportunity to be a part of someone's life and help out, as well as learning more things in a different environment and just testing myself in a different environment and see how I can adapt to, like, the weather or the people or just a completely different culture that might be completely different than what I'm preparing myself for. So just to learn new things, and Iceland seems like a good combination of enough familiarity in the circle of people I know, as well as Scandinavian aspects, and just also with the science, with the volcanic activity, and just the biology and everything that's happening there, and the evolution that's happening so much faster than what people were predicting it to be. There's just a lot of good aspects to go spend 3 months over there. For sure.